Can you explain us a little bit what we're going to see tomorrow in the performance?
Well, I think that we're hoping it's going to be more than what you see. It's really important for us to deprioritize visuality. So we're in an age where there's just a complete surfeit of imagery. It's one of the ways that we communicate globally. We share little snapshots of what our life experience is. And as dancers who were trained to really perform imagery, to embody other people's ideas of representation and to participate in that history of representation, we are really trying to push back against that in our work. So we try to really open ourselves back to the haptic, to the aural, to the olfactory, to other ways of being sensory, intelligent, responsive beings. And so we hope in our work that you participate not just in looking, but in feeling in through your own body a kind of empathic response to what we're mining.
And at the same time, as we build principles around these values that we share as artists, we are constantly negotiating the distance between this practice or these principles, this discipline, this other way of being a disciplined dancer, and bringing it back into the sometimes difficult reality of representation. And we draw a lot from our background in formal training in that way, so that while we're privileging the somatic interests, pleasures, attentions, needs of bodies, of ourselves, we are interested and challenged by bringing it back out into the world and making choices around it, so it doesn't collapse into those bottomless sensory experiences, but it's something that we can actually share back with you, really with other people. And being here, being with Natasha and Elizabeth, is a really strong container for that, which isn't fixed. And we have a lot of freedom around how we engage. Yeah,
that was the second question, because your performance is very straight, direct, in relation with Elizabeth Tubergen's structure.
Yes.
So how was the negotiation or the relation between Elizabeth's ideas and your performance ideas?
We've worked with Elizabeth before, and so I think there was trust between us. We've known each other for years. We've shared ideas for a long time. We've broken bread together. We've shared intimate space and conversation as well as artistic practice. So from the beginning, we were discussing what our interests were. We did a kind of earlier iteration of this project just to investigate how we would work with the sound score, how we'd work with text, how we'd work with these kind of notes from our studio practice in a presence practice last December. And so we were talking with Elizabeth about that from the beginning. As she was constructing the piece and we were constructing the piece, it was happening very much in dialogue. But when we came into the space a couple of days ago, it was like not, the scale was very different. And the principles that we've chosen to work with, instead of coming in with a set piece, we came in with a kind of thick research that we've been cultivating solo, in a solo way, but we solo together. And we knew that we would need to respond not just to Elizabeth's sculpture, but also the space and the other work in that space and how it would feel to be next to these other artists' works. So I think part of what we were doing together was building up this trust bed that would allow us to make choices in the moment that feel ethical and responsible.
Dages was saying the other day that within the way that we work, everyone has to be okay. It's not okay not to be okay.
Okay.
But again, how do you not collapse into passivity or not making choices, or and therefore rebuild a structure that can be shared. that can be visible or legible or felt by the audience or with the audience. And that's what we're doing while we're here, really, being in the space, talking to the other artists, knowing them, knowing their work, and continuing to honor our work and our shared practice, and how do we interact together. And it's become really important to us. It feels like a way of talking back to the violence of representation that we share as people within ourselves, within our relationships, within our citizenships, and all of the above. So for us, this is really where it all begins in a certain way. And we're very privileged and fortunate to be able to do this research that way. Yeah.
And maybe you explained it before, but just like the last question, Natasha, in her research, in the project, she's talking about the stranger, the
Yes.
other, the otherness.
Yes.
Can we find something similar or something related with this great concept in the performance that we are going to see tomorrow? And how is this strange in your work?
Mm-hmm. Well, we've been talking about this a lot. I think for both of us in different ways, alterity is kind of a cornerstone of our practice and the ways that we experience our white, cis American bodies, but the other is always introjected. It was introjected into us racially, in a gendered way, in a class way, through our education. We are already othered to ourselves. And our studio practice is one of trying to turn back towards all of the selves that congeal to create this organism that I experience as me, and that Alexis experiences as she. And even we've been working together for 20 years, but we're always, I know her body like I know my own, but she's an other. I am an other. Every moment that we're together, it's an encounter of totally different beings, universes that are unknowable to each other. And that it's part of the title of our work. It's contact crisis. The contact is a crisis. It's also the creativity. And it's that deep desire to touch and be touched by an other. And it's the most terrifying in the world because we are the most dangerous beings to each other.
Right, we were talking about that yesterday, that it's the thing we crave the most. Maybe you just said this. We crave contact the most, and yet it is the most dangerous thing to do. And so we're constantly stuck as people in this tension, in a way.
And that desire for contact between each other, but also inside of ourselves, those splits, those pieces that we try to, there's a piece, it's a part of the Nancy essay on the ejection fraction, your favorite term, which to me really is about, in the essay he's talking about how he can't survive without without rejecting the otherness, the most internal otherness possible. He can't survive without accepting it. And for us too, on another level, we can't split parts of ourselves off and live totally. And for us as dancers, we really research the ways in which those splits occur in our fascia, how we feel parts of ourselves as like, it's not myself, like only this is myself. And it's not true, it's a big lie. What is it if we really live in our whole flesh and we communicate from that place and we live in our whole psyche, which is not split from the fascia, right? So how do we turn towards that which has been culturally or through trauma split off and isolated into a realm of invisibility? How do we bring it back so that we can really encounter each other?
Part of the reason this is so charged and fascinating for us, it comes from sharing the dance background. So it's this formal training, and we grew up living the Cartesian split. You follow this pathway. This is reality, and this is how we make it.
And into a mirror.
It's extremely codified. And as a dancer, you train this way in yourself. And then you use it to make pictures and stories and shows for other authors. And so for us, this is our big feminist project.
The big feminist project.
Yeah, and it's like so liberating and exciting to shift the values, shift what's interesting, and really work with the virtuosity of your attention,
That's
of
beautiful.
your perception, of your relationality, of your ability to translate, your ability to contain and hold spaces for other people. Because those are the implicit disciplines that all dancers share, every single one, even the most formal trainer. But they're not the visible, right? So they're not the privileged parts of that training. So it's exciting for us to really bring them forth and say, well, maybe this is the most interesting, or the most valuable, or it has the most to give back. And it's scary too, because it's not as visible.
Right.
How do you translate it? How do you talk about it? Yeah. So we're always looking for the puzzle pieces of, I don't know, for me, bringing it out.
Yeah, I think, can I say it to something else? Yeah, I mean, it takes us, we don't talk, we just roll on the floor, so it takes us a while. But there's something that Alexis was saying about that kind of implicit discipline that dancers share. A big thing that we invest in from tiny people learning dance is to listen. It's like, it's also very gendered, this training, because you have to know where other people are in space, and you have to attune. And these are skills that we learn. Everybody can learn them, but they're also feminized values. So a big piece for me of dance training was also, there's the kind of reparative side, which is learning how to listen, how to touch, how to work, how to synchronize and become one of many. But then there's also the piece where you are literally training yourself to other yourself. You're looking in a mirror, you're seeing yourself as a visual representation of a form that is archetypal. And you're trained to compare yourself to other people. So the kind of feminized competition is also built into the dance studio, where you are seeing yourself as different pieces. Her neck, her leg, her arabesque. Where do I measure up in comparison? And it took a long time to come back into a dance practice from a desire to de-other, to take all of these reparative skills and turn them towards creating a self and moving from a self that is it's on the inside and the outside, but we don't work with mirrors anymore. And I mean, of course, we're human beings. We compare each other to ourselves, but we interrogate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that becomes explicit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the other, the stranger, can be done in this act of mirroring. And we've talked a lot about that for this piece, how to mirror and how it's impossible, but you attempt, and then what fails is interesting. And within our principles, that's allowed. And it's not wrong, it's not broken, but it's more material. It's just another thing to notice, and it changes as it goes.